Hi, everyone. This is Anastasia Gores from PilatesBridge.com. And today we have an interview with two amazing ladies, Anne Bishop and Chantill Lopez. They're both co-creators of the Embodied Course Creation Program. And they're going to tell a little bit more about what it's all about. However, I'm really excited about this interview because we're going to be talking not just about the courses or anything like that, but how can you, as a Pilates and movement professional, break through your hourly pay rate ceiling? How can you get outside of that service mindset? And how can you really have more freedom in your life? So it's not just all about teach, and you sleep and you basically dream about teaching and you wake up and you continue teaching. How can you break through it and still keep your passion and have your free time? So ladies, I'll let you introduce yourself a little bit, how you related to the Pilates and movement environment, community. What do you do now? What you did before? Tell us your stories.
Would you like to start, Anne?
Yeah, go. No, please
I'll start.
begin,
Okay.
Chantill.
Well, I have been an entrepreneur essentially my entire adult life. I have a degree in journalism and creative writing, but I quickly discovered that that was not where I was meant to be. And as a mover my entire life, I was drawn to Pilates at a very early age, probably the mid to late 90s. I started practicing Pilates and really fell in love with it, as we all do, I think, and became a teacher and taught in Hawaii for a time where I was living when I was, in my early 20s. And I really just, I never stopped. So I've been teaching movement for 20, almost 25 years. And I've owned multiple studios, and I've just kind of traveled the path of doing all the things that one does as a movement professional. Besides owning studios, I've run teacher trainings. I was a master Pilates teacher for, oh my goodness, for Balanced Body for more than a decade. And when I owned my second studio in Northern California in wine country, which is where Anne and I met, I just, I really have always been drawn to this idea that I'm not teaching the whole body in front of me, but that I'm teaching the whole person in front of me. And I always felt like that was a missing piece in our profession of really understanding how to be in the relationship with people. And so my career has evolved to include a myriad of movement modalities. And I developed a mentorship program and an educational company in 2013 called Skillful Teaching. I wrote a book called Moving Beyond Technique about the same time, and started my podcast, the Thinking Pilates podcast, with my dear friend, Deborah Colway of the Pilates Center in Boulder, Colorado, about the same time. So I've always really been driven to fill these gaps in our community of supporting teachers in their professional growth, but also in their personal growth. And, as I think a longtime movement teacher, we all have experienced what you were speaking to, Anastasia, which is that kind of overworked experience, of loving what we do, but feeling like we're just grinding it out day after day after day. And I think meeting Anne and I met early. Oh my goodness. I don't know when we first met was like in the early 2000s. I feel like when we started working together and percolating together, and we realized we were so like-minded was around 2011. And then we started creating together, and we launched what we called the Science and Psychology of Teaching Master's Program in 2016. And I think being in partnership with Anne has really brought to the surface in a more powerful way this desire to uplift the people who are drawn to be teachers and educators of the body, and to change lives through the body. And I know I feel really proud of what we've created, and very honored to be in relationship with Anne through all the iterations of our work, which is now the Embodied Course Creation Program, is our flagship program And yeah, we just getting out of the dollars per hour hustle, man, that's the ticket, right? Location freedom, time freedom, financial freedom. We have experienced the profound like possibility of that. And now we are dedicated to showing other teachers and movement professionals, anybody really who is in the embodied world, how to do that, how to move out of the service economy and what we think of as a shift into the knowledge economy. So, and that's all I do right now. This my work with Anne since about 2020. I stopped doing everything that I was doing except for working in collaboration with Anne. And it's been an amazing journey.
Awesome. Anne, what do you have to share with us?
Oh, sure. Absolutely. I think I'll share my story. I hope that it's relatable. I think like many Pilates teachers, I was first introduced to Pilates actually in college at UC Irvine. I was double majoring in dance and biology down there. And unfortunately, I got a back injury. And I was like the classic like dancer, story, right? I remember going to see, wonderful doctors in San Francisco. I'm also from Northern California. There was a beautiful dance medicine center there. And the doctor, I remember he looked at my scan and was like, like there's nothing on your scan. It's all in your head. And I'm like 20. And so I was very into studying at that time. So I was like, okay, well, what can I learn about like pain being in your head? So I like took out this book by Dr. James Sarno. He recently passed away, but he was the first person who sort of looked at movement and the sense of like the brain and its impact on it. So then I became a Pilates instructor in 2001-ish. And I actually have my very first dollar that I ever made from Pilates.
Cool.
I saw it the other day and I actually put the date on it. I knew, I think it was like 6/15/01. I knew it was going to be something that I would do in my life. And so it's just been a wonderful opportunity, like many people, and similar to Chantill, I took a very similar path, and I opened a studio. It was almost by happenstance. I didn't even kind of mean to, but there just were so few places to teach. It just sort of became something. So I actually opened that in 2002. And then I began teacher training, in the mid 2000s. Really had a lot of fun with that in my early 20s. Did a lot of travel. This was all pre Facebook, right? So I remember like being on the phone with people in Spain and being like, yeah, you need a Pilates instructor. I mean, it was just such a different time. But it was great. And then in 2010, I really was curious. I have a mentor that was very influential in my early life of Pilates teaching. Her name is Connelly Weinberg. She's phenomenal. And she was really thinking about movement in the brain. And so I went to Harvard and I studied mind, brain, and education, where I learned about cognitive science, pedagogy, movement science, and how to essentially how does our brain learn movement? I was very curious about that. So then I started Body Brain Connect in 2011, reconnected with Chantill. We started percolating on ideas together. And then again, as she mentioned, in 2016, we both had smaller children at that point. And, we were designing online course curriculum at that time together. We would have teachers come in and work with us for 5 months online, and then they would come to the studio and present their ideas. A lot of this information was information I'd learned in my graduate studies about project design, about adult learning, about what matters and things like that. And then I myself sold my studio at the very, very end of last year. So I'm just fresh out of studio ownership, and I'm really loving it. I'm loving being on the other side. So
awesome. Well, thanks for sharing that. Well, let's dive straight into the question that we have in hand here. I'm sure a lot of teachers, they just want to know the answer. And here's a quote. Yeah, I know, we all like to talk and all that, but when it comes down, it's okay, just, yeah, give me the facts. I want to point out, like before our interview, I went to the website, like Anne and Chantill's website, and there's a really cool resource that I found there, and this is called the blueprint for financial time and location freedom. It's absolutely free, so I encourage you, if you guys are any interested in any of those items, and if you're not, then you probably shouldn't be watching this interview, but if you're interested, go and just download it. I signed up for their newsletter, got a lot of great information there that I'm not gonna disclose here yet, so you guys can get it. But one of the items on that landing page that I picked out, like a quote that they mentioned, I want to read it out. So they said, to make the switch from selling your soul per hour to leveraging your knowledge and passion using the new knowledge economy model. So this is the question that we're here to discuss. First of all, can you ladies share me, like, why should you consider switching from the hourly rate? What's wrong with it, I guess?
Well, I'll just jump right in. I mean, what's not wrong with it? I feel like it's an interesting thing to reflect on as a teacher. I think when Anne and I started really kind of cultivating this position and this idea, we were like, well, this is just the model that's been handed down. This is how we do our best work. Like, there is I'll just be totally frank, in my opinion, a misguided hierarchy about the way we can make impact with our students. And we are taught to believe, now I don't think this was Joseph's belief, but from the Pilates perspective, but we have been handed down a paradigm and a belief that our biggest impact is made one-on-one, right? And I certainly believed that for a long time. And I leaned deeply into manual cueing and adjustments, and I was always a big hands-on teacher intuitively. And I love that. And I love the relationship, and I love being with people in that way. And so, but what that does is that holds us hostage to always teaching, exchanging essentially X amount of dollars per 55 minutes, 50 minutes, 60 minutes, whatever the framework is that you're teaching, which means that at some point you are completely limited in the amount of money you can make. And to me, that is a huge issue. We are so talented and so driven and so knowledgeable, and we make huge impact on people's lives and in our communities and on the world. To think that, we all have a kind of a ethical, moral limit, I think, of how much we want to charge per hour. And so then multiply that by the times of, how many hours you have in a day, particularly if you're a female and you have a family, which, our industry is hugely driven by that. You absolutely can never make more. Like, that is unacceptable. To me, it's unacceptable. It has always been unacceptable. And when you start to feel the weight of that, you might not know that's what it is, but you're tired and you're overwhelmed. And now you're running a business because that's what we do. We think, why, if I'm a teacher, why not own a studio? Whether it's a home studio or a big studio, like we had, it doesn't matter, because now you're also a business owner. You're also the marketing team. You're also the accounting team. Like, as small business owners, we typically do everything. And we are still dependent on showing up hour after hour to make any money, right? But it's just not, it's not the way it has to be, because we can leverage. So this is the shift. So that's the service economy, right? I'm going to trade my time for your money. And we tell ourselves that it's so fulfilling until it's not, until you're literally waking up, like you said, dreaming about teaching. I mean, I remember, I always talk about it as like the dark night of my soul moment, where I was like having nightmares. I was having breakdowns literally in the back of the studio from sheer exhaustion, and just feeling like I'm so disheartened and heartbroken by the fact that I no longer love the thing that I thought I was meant to do. And for me, that was a real calling to say, either I'm going to stop and completely change my life, or I'm not going to put up with it. I'm going to change it. I'm going to make it better. And that's what I did. And my work with Anne is really the fruition of that, of liberating myself and other teachers into this idea of my knowledge is worth way more than I can charge for an hour. And then we have to figure out what's the new vehicle, what's the new container, and to deliver our knowledge that is not, as Anne likes to say, standing at the foot of the reformer, or the Cadillac or whatever it might be. And it can be a big mental shift for people, particularly, as I mentioned before, this issue of, but I can do my best work one-on-one. It's just not true. And if you think it's true, you're limiting yourself. There's so many other ways based in brain science, based in nervous system work, like they're just based in curriculum design. Like there's just so many other ways to make tremendous impact on people than sitting next to them for an hour once a week. But that was a long answer.
No, I mean, it's great. And do you have anything to add to it?
Yeah, what I'd love for you to do is just ask the question again.
Okay. So why do you think that it's important? Why should teachers consider switching from the hourly rate, that service mindset, to an alternative?
Yeah, why? Okay.
Why?
The why, and Chantill just got me so fired up. Like, I'm like, oh, and I think she touched on many good points. I would just say, like, why? Because your knowledge matter, your smarts matter. And I feel like we've been handed a hill of beans for how to leverage what we know and how to make impact and change. Like, here's an example. A surgeon is paid on a salary, most likely a salary basis. I don't know how surgeons are paid, whether it's hourly or salary, but whether that surgery, whether they go in and work on your hip and it takes them 20 minutes in there, or 40 minutes or 80 minutes, like they're still going to get billed, about the same amount. But, and I think like that's what happens too, is like when you've been teaching for a while, you get really good. You get, like, I call them, you're like a body whisperer, right? And there are many body whisperers in our community. And you develop relationships with those students so that the moment they walk in the door, you know what their body needs, and they trust you, and they go like right into you, right? Like they just feel so heard. And in the service economy, there is, in the dollars per hour economy, unless you're charging, I'm imagining like a lawyer fee, right? And there's been lots of articles about, X, Y, or Z Pilates instructor in X, Y, or Z fancy town is charging $500 an hour, right? But in the reality, like, we should all be charging $500 an hour because of the knowledge, at least for those of you, and many of us are in our community, are so educated and understand their clients so well. And so we really want you, I think it's important that we consider the shift, because you just don't need to stay stuck in the dollars per hour economy, because I don't teach the same way I did 20 years ago. I didn't run my business the same way I did. Like, if you're running your Pilates business on a 1997 Pilates model, I encourage you to shift. Like we shift the way we run our businesses, we shift the way, and I encourage you to expand the way you teach. I still take private Pilates. Chantill still occasionally teaches it. It's not that we're saying throw it out.
No,
it's
absolutely.
There's so much more and so many other possibilities and to teach with all the knowledge you have. But most people are not going to come into a studio and want to pay $300 an hour to work with you, even though I feel like that's the worth, because you're thinking about the student all the time.
Yeah. And really, I mean, I think Anne is speaking to diversification. And I think some teachers, maybe many, would say, well, I do diversify, right? I teach privates, I teach semi-privates, I teach group classes. It's like, well, that's not diversifying how you like the business model. That's just the offer. It's still a dollar for hour exchange. And so that's not, that's not what we're talking about, right? We're talking about how you offer your knowledge and to consider this is the thing that really excites me, honestly. It's not just a business model shift, which is required in part, right? And we can hybridize it and we can get creative, and that's really exciting and fun. But to consider, to open your mind and learn the skills to impact greater transformation on your students, and also move toward the knowledge economy, right? Not just have to trade dollars for hours all the time. There is a way to do that. And I know that for me, when we started to really put all of these pieces together, was one of the most exhilarating parts, right? Is to feel like I was still, we know that our community is made up of lifelong learners. We're driven to learn. We're driven to excel. We're driven to give more to our students all the time, right? We want to deepen our knowledge. This is a way to deepen your knowledge, but in a whole different capacity that actually literally changes how much you can make. Because, if you really look at it, no matter how much education you get, there is a ceiling to how much you can charge and how much you're willing to charge. I think we really need to acknowledge that for ourselves. Like, how much will the market bear for a private session or a class? And then how do we feel good? I know a lot of teachers that we work with struggle with, I want it to be accessible because I care so much about people. And so there's really this balancing act, but there are different ways to do it that don't mean that you have to be exclusionary in the cost.
So that really brings us to the next question. If we know that service-based pricing mindset is not ideal, what type of alternative are we talking about? What are some of the suggestions or the ideas that you can give all these teachers?
Yeah, so I think one of the powers of what we do as Pilates instructors is that most of us are pretty darn solution driven. So a lot of times we are solving problems for our students. Many of us in the industry have tons of specialized education, essentially, I might call it special populations. I don't know if that shows how long I've been in the industry, but we used to call it special populations, where you would learn scoliosis and you would learn osteoporosis and you would learn movement for nervous system challenges or brain challenges, pre-postnatal, like all of it, right? And there's all of these ways in which you are essentially when you learn that information, which is a lot of what the CEC industry of the Pilates industry is built on, you are essentially solving the problems for the people within those special populations. So you're solving a problem for someone with scoliosis, you're solving a problem for someone with osteoporosis, you're solving a problem, and then there's just pain, right? Most people who own a Pilates or have worked in Pilates are most likely working with someone who might have some pain. I know some studios are a little bit more fitness oriented, and that's wonderful and great as well. But a lot of times you're still solving a psychic pain. And so to get back to the question, it's like, if you're able to solve a problem, and so that's one thing, you're solving a problem for someone. The other deep thing I find in the Pilates industry is, like, once you've been teaching for a while, you're like, you're going to get comments like, I feel so much better when I leave. Oh my gosh, like, I didn't want to come in and now I feel amazing, right? Like, they leave, they feel lighter, they feel better. I think many of us understand that when we're working with the body, which we do, that is like the tip of the iceberg of supporting the whole person, which is what Chantill spoke to. And so many of us are very keyed into the understanding of, like, I am impacting this person on a greater level than just their body. They're leaving feeling emotionally better. They are happy that now they have the strength and the confidence in their body that they can go do X, Y, or Z without having issues. And so if we can start to think about what are the problems we're solving, and that movement is really an entryway into better health and wellness versus the only thing that we do, while staying in our lane as Pilates instructors, which we can do, because Chantill and I are game for that. Like, we don't need to, we're not saying, go outside of the code of ethics or the, like our scope of practice. That's the terminology I'm looking for. So to me, that's the way in which you can start to really support your people. Is getting
but let's take it a step further and into like what that actually looks like. So what Ann and I do, one of the primary things that we do through the Embodied Course Creation Program is we lean into our 2 areas of expertise and our 40 plus years of experience. So as Ann mentioned, she has a degree from Harvard in mind-brain education. She brings to the table this amazing wealth of knowledge around curriculum design. So designing education that is extrapolated, driven by how the brain learns and how the brain learns movement specifically, and how to best teach in an online format. So all of these pieces, and then my expertise is in the nervous system and behavior change through the nervous system, through the body. So we bring all of this to bear, and we are supporting teachers in creating curriculum that is transformative. So it starts with, what is a consistently solvable problem that you are committed to solving or that you are good at solving? And then how do you take all of your experience and knowledge and organize it in a way that is motivating, engaging, supports transformation and behavior change, whether you are doing that in person, because that's a possibility. Absolutely. We're not just advocating the online delivery method, but is supported by bringing work online. So as Ann likes to say, like when you're with a student in the studio for an hour, there's so much you want to give them. There's so much you want to share with them. You want to dive deeper because you know that if they understood just a little bit more, that they would be more motivated. They would have more insight. They would have more growth. They would have more positive outcomes. But you only have 50 minutes, 55 minutes, whatever you have. And then they go away. And then who knows if they're going to do what you've asked them to do. So in this curriculum design framework that we teach and guide people through, you are able to leverage the integrity of any online work or in-person work that you want to do, that you've been doing, and support it with what we call an ecosystem of knowledge that is delivered online. And we also teach people how to do that fully online. And either way, it's about the design. It's about how you organize the information, how you deliver it, how you coach and mentor people. And then you have this is what I was speaking to earlier, like it opens up your capacity to transform people. The feedback that we've gotten over and over and over again through COVID and beyond is that my students are actually gaining more ground, experiencing greater outcomes, and have greater self-advocacy and autonomy. Like, because they're online. What? Like, it's very counterintuitive. We think, I don't want to take my work online. Not everybody, but this is some of the feedback we get. Because I'm committed to the in-person experience. I'm committed to the integrity of my work being delivered, through my hands, through my presence. Awesome. Do that and diversify into the online space to create powerful, transformative hybrid curriculum that supports your students even more. It's actually quite simple. And in this way, once you learn this skill, it's a rinse and repeat kind of situation. You use the skill, you use the framework. I've used it for writing books, for doing podcasts, for writing articles, for creating sessions. And then, of course, Ann and I are pretty prolific in terms of creating, education for teachers. So it's this really juicy skill that allows you to leverage your knowledge and create a new kind of offering that does not require you to show up hour by hour by hour by hour. And it's quite fun. I mean, it's fun and exciting. So
It's
that's
creative.
incredibly creative.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's the nuts and bolts.
Yeah. So with this kind of curriculum, guess my question is, I'm always like to ask like very practical application of all of that. Let's say, if you were to talk, let's have like a hypothetical Pilates teacher, she owns a studio, she teaches however many hours a week, all that. And she charges, she has her rates, whatever, memberships or per session, whatever it is, she has all that stuff already in place. With that new curriculum in place, what can she add to her offerings? I mean, is it going to be more like a one-time thing, like a coaching program that her clients will get maybe as an add-on or something like that? Is it going to be something that she's going to be marketing to a completely different audience, way outside of her comfort zone, of her little local peeps and all that? Where is she taking it?
Yeah,
Yeah.
well, what we've seen, so I'll give you some examples from the students. So like on a very practical level, so if you've been teaching for a while, there's a chance that some of your clients have moved away.
Yep.
And particularly with the disruption we've had recently. And if you just teach them on Zoom, you're still doing dollars for hours. Right. So we've absolutely seen some of our students, there's a way that you can call it, or teachers, kind of like internal marketing versus external marketing. So you can internally market to your people or your past people if you've been teaching for a while. And some of them will be interested. Obviously, some will not. I mean, we've never had 100% of our teachers have 100% of their students all come into an online program with them. Like that's not many people. They love the online. I mean, they love the in-person, they love the hands-on, like, so that I don't want to like, that's not reality. But what teachers can expect is that some of their students will be interested in that. And let me be very clear. You can create something like a 6-week program for new students coming in. So that's something we really try to support teachers in. So anybody new coming in, they're not just coming in for an intro special, they're coming in for more education and knowledge to really jumpstart them and get them going. That's one model. Another model is some teachers love to do retreats. And retreats are amazing, and retreats are very popular right now because everybody wants to like, I can get out again and like, let's do this. But again, like the retreats are lovely and phenomenal, but you're going to get all these people to a retreat. They might not all live near you. How are you going to continue to serve them in not a dollars per hour model? So you're just teaching them on Zoom. So what you do is you can design and create a program that might be an 8-week program, that might be a 6-week, 12-week, you kind of think of like sometimes if you can think of it as semester, trimester, like however you want to think about it. And then, and maybe people are engaging in that before the retreat. Maybe then they have the retreat, then they engage it more on the back end. And why do we do that? It's because Chantill and I are really committed to education. People will learn more if you give them a larger container versus just, here we all are. Like that was one of the rubs that kind of got Chantill and I started on this work. It's like, well, we love going to get CECs on the weekend, but then like you go and then you're just like in your studio all by yourself. And like, let's this isn't brain science, but it is brain science. Like, let's create more containers for people so there's like, or, if you're a studio owner and you have a teacher training program and you want to do a mentorship program, I mean, Chantill's like, the goddess at this, and those mentorship programs can be online or partially online or in line and like, there's so many ways to do it. And so that's why I kind of cut in with Chantill and I was like, the creativity, like we want to support you in what's going to work for you. And what works for most teachers, to be honest, is increasing their revenue. So, and increasing their profit.
What we all want. I mean, it's what we want. We want to feel like, we're being valued. We want to feel like our life's work is producing the life that we want. We talk a lot about, it's not just about curriculum design and business design, it's about life design, right? That there shouldn't be a disconnect. There shouldn't be like, well, I have a passion job, therefore I'm going to have to sacrifice making a lot of money, or even just enough money that makes me feel good so that I can save and buy a house and, pay for college for my children, or whatever, whatever it is, or travel the world, whatever you want to do. It does not have to be a trade-off. And I've always been of that nature. Like, I'm a little greedy. Like, I want it all. I want to have a career that I love, that's driven by my passion. I want to have a family. I want to travel the world. And guess what? I do. And it is possible. And so back to your question, Anastasia, I think it's, you can take this model and you can really sculpt it to suit you. I love what Anne mentioned. This is very powerful, like to create a program that supports your incoming students. So it becomes a part of your onboarding process. And it's like a juicy extra. I mean, they're paying for it, but they're getting it as a part of their introduction. And what's built into the framework of this curriculum design is a huge community learning component. And that is something that I think that a lot of us struggle to figure out how to create and build a cohesive community within our studio or our studio spaces. And what we know about learning and community is that it's highly motivating and that we learn better together, right? And so this curriculum design builds in community learning. Like, we can talk about that from a lot of different perspectives, from the nervous system perspective of co-regulating to the brain-based perspective of distributive cognition, which is just that Anastasia, you and me and Anne together could create something better than I could create by myself. That's just science. So the curriculum design supports and builds in those components. So as Anne said, you don't have to give up doing private sessions, but redistribute a part of what you do to do something different so that you are revitalized, you are energized, you are fulfilled, and it raises your bottom line.
Got it. So I guess that brings us to the next question that a lot of other teachers will probably have, and they're thinking, okay, I'm already teaching, running a studio, 80 hours a week, counting. How do I find time to work on this other offer? How can I find time for that learning and creation when I'm so burned out?
Yeah, I mean, that is a challenge. And like, we know we're both caretakers. We have families, we've businesses. Like, we want to be honest, like, there will be a season in the creation zone where you might be working, if you have children, after they go to bed or, or squeezing it in somehow. Like, I don't want to, of course, we were deeply doing this within COVID. So, it's like even a little more crazy, but the thing is you're building something. That's not you saying, oh, I'm going to put my kids to bed and then I'm going to Zoom a client for an hour because they're on a different time zone. Like, that's work you don't want to do. And the other thing that Chantill and I have done, which is really supportive, is within the Embodied Course Creation program, we use a very simple form of technology where we are supporting our teachers throughout the day, whether it's in between clients or whether it's
2 o'clock in the morning. I mean, we're not responding, but
yeah. So like, we get that it's a challenge, and like, yes, building something requires work, but once you've built something, it's there and it's rinse and repeat.
Yeah.
So you're no longer fighting, because you can choose to market your course or talk about your course at any time, not only at 10 a.m. on Thursday with that favorite client who's been coming to you for 12 years, right? So there's a ton more flexibility within this model, because when you give this model, because you've designed a curriculum, and we teach you to build a curriculum that's so strong it stands on its own, like that's good curriculum, or that some other really good, good teacher could teach it. There's a lot of bright teachers in our community, like it's strong, they got it. So that means that you're teaching while you're making dinner. Someone's watching your video and learning while you're dropping your kids off at school, or someone's buying your course while, you're backing out of the driveway. Like it's just, it completely takes out and now I have to show up at this time. And it's like, that's the knowledge economy, and you're all smart enough to enter into it.
Well, let's bring to the surface an example that you and I were talking about, Anne, which might make sense and resonate with folks. Is a lot of us make the decision or are considering making the decision to switch to memberships or the membership model. And Anne, you did that. You have firsthand experience with the depth of output and resources and energy that took to actually implement, which is, it does, what did you say, that it increased your revenue by?
I would say when I went to the membership model, it increased my revenue by about 20%. And it was still constant work, right? So anytime you're looking for a shift, right, you have to decide, is the output worth the outcome, right? That's just the way it goes. You have to decide to lay other things down to make time to be in that building phase. You're either going to make the choice or you're not going to make the choice. That's just, you do that. Like Anne and I are we're in a deep learning phase right now where we spent 5 days for 6 hours a day learning through the Neuro Leadership Institute. And we just worked it out. You just work it out. But we know that the payoff is infinite and expansive. So it might have taken 5 days, but we can leverage the knowledge for the rest of our lives. So with the membership model, you're probably hiring a company or a coach. You're also you're probably working with somebody in your studio or somebody who's helping you do all the things. And then it's a lot of output, where it's just a lot of financial output and time output. But then once it's done, it's still trading dollars for hours. The difference with creating a course and learning how to create transformative and embodied curriculum is that once you learn it, that's the whole point, is you are no longer trading dollars for hours. And once you have done it once, doing it a second time is a breeze, and doing it a third time is even easier, and doing it a fourth time is even easier. And so it might take time to build and fulfill, but once you do it the first time, it gets exponentially easier while you make more money. It seems a little bit like a magic bullet, but it really is that. So it's a different kind of investment to return is basically what I'm saying.
So let me continue playing like devil's advocate here. So, okay. And then a lot of teachers, and I know this is the next, and I work with a lot of them in, my business, but every time you talk to them about anything online or anything like that, the first word that comes out of their mind, I don't like technology. So how do you handle, obviously if it's not an online program, we don't have to discuss that, but if it's something that will be online related, how complicated it is to integrate the technology? Are there some of the tools that you ladies provide or help them with? Is it something that they just have to figure out, like, oh, hey, I have all this knowledge and all this stuff, what do you do with it?
Well, we definitely do not leave you hanging, because, and I'll let Anne field this question, but what I will say is that we have had so many teachers come to us that have done other things where they have been left hanging around the technology. And so we 100% do not do that, but I'll let Anne speak to that directly.
Yeah. So one of the things that you do as an educator is you see like, where are people struggling? And Chantill and I saw people are struggling with tech. Like it was clear in what they spoke to us, and then in sometimes within the course. And we've from day one supported with technology. But one of the things that we do within the embodied course creation is one of the major tasks that we support you in doing before the course is done is that you get your program up on what people call a learning management system. So, and we do that through tutorials, and we don't just send you to tutorials that some third-party company made. We made the tutorials. So we're speaking the tech in your language. We're like, okay, or I think Chantill made the videos, so I can let her speak to that, but maybe she can even sneak some nervous system work in there while if you're getting really stressed on the tech. But and it's really true in our industry. Most people are in our industry because they don't want to sit behind a desk and do that. Like that's the reason they're there. Like we get that, but technology, like once you get over that hump, like it's just a hump. And I just want to share with you, like if you can teach someone to segment their spine well, one vertebrae at a time, or you can get somebody to disassociate their hip, you can learn technology. Like we're there to support you. And we have lots of ways. We even have a private, we have a woman who works with us who we can get her on with you and support you. So it's like, don't let that be your story. Like just get over that hump, because once it's up, and technology is a lot easier than it used to be, just so you know, it's not like as challenging. And putting something on a learning management system, in my opinion, is not as hard as building a website, because the learning management system, which is what hosts your information, wants to make it easy. Right. So there's a lot of things in place, and we absolutely address that. I mean, what do you think there would be another pushback on that question though? Because that's something like we do here and we're like, oh no, we've got you. But
yeah, and I mean, I guess like the second one would be, okay, well, we'll have the technology. Well, I'm sure you probably recommend specific programs, specific LMS that you work with. Second thing's like, okay, well, there is, but for any tool that you use, there's an investment that comes into place with that. What is it going to run me to, a month? Like how much will I have to add to my monthly expenses or anything like that, just to add on this extra while I'm building out and everything?
Yeah, well, I will say it's cheaper than most online scheduling software, particularly the big ones that most of us probably work if we own a studio. I won't name any names.
Nope.
And I mean, a little bit, I want to like, okay, you teach Pilates, but you're also an entrepreneur. It requires investment. Like, I mean, and we also support teachers and we've had many of our teachers use Google Classroom, which is completely free.
Okay.
Yeah, we doesn't have all the bells and whistles, not quite so much, but like, yeah, if that is incredibly like your concern that you absolutely want to do it the most least expensive way, you can do it free. I mean, you can email people videos, like, and we can support you with that.
Yeah. And let me be really clear. Like we literally have a guide to tech that we give you that says, here are the things that we know work. Here are the things that we use. Here's an entire list of everything we use to run our business. And then we break it down. What's free, what's low cost, what's medium cost, what's high cost. So you don't have to go, I mean, because people, we get stuck in this searching, right? We get like in the whirlpool of like, what to choose. There's so much to choose from. There's so much information. We just say, here's what we do. Here's how we do it. And here are the alternatives for free, low cost, mid cost, high cost. And I always think about it this way too, of like, if you think about what it costs for you to rent a studio space, the return on investment for a learning management system is massive, right? It's massive. So it might feel like a lot at first because you've never invested in it and you don't have an experience of the return. but I will tell you that the return is way more than the return on your studio space. So it's a matter of shifting perspective. But as Anne said, you can do it for free. We teach you how to use the free resources. The tutorials are very simple. We are committed to ease. We are constantly, like, that's our mantra in our business, is what's the easiest path forward. And so we're trying to always present that to our teachers too. And just as an extra little bonus, like, if you use the learning management system that we think is best, you get a 25% off discount. So, we're doing all the things to support you in all the ways. So we know how scary that first step can be. And we're literally, we've been doing it long enough that we have thought of all the things. So you are in good hands. We get it. We get it. It can be scary and it can be hard.
So I guess, like, the last question that we're going to discuss that, and that's another one of the big ones that I think a lot of teachers have. One of the issues that they have with teaching and running a business whatsoever is they don't like to sell, right? They don't like to market. They don't like to sell. They don't want to feel like a used car lot salesman. It's just outside of their comfort zone. And obviously, with any kind of program, in order to get the maximum return on it, there has to be a certain level of marketing that you have to put into it, not just like, oh, if I build it, they will come. Well,
right.
Yeah.
No, they won't.
No magical thinking. Yeah.
No, definitely not going to work. So is it something that you support them, and also, like, maybe, I'm sure, because I read through some of your stuff, so I know you do support, like a little spoiler there, but maybe you can give, like, some kind of, like, practical examples of how you would do it, or maybe, like, some recommendations to where people don't feel like, oh my word, like, this is just another job that I will have to run full time, just marketing, rethinking. So what can you say about the marketing aspect?
Well, I'll just begin the conversation and just say, like, if you're selling, well, I absolutely hated selling too. I hated it. Mm-hmm. I was like, I'm a Pilates instructor. I'm a backstage girl. Like, even when I was a dancer, like, I almost just enjoyed dancing at the bar even more than I enjoyed being on stage. I just, like, I was did not want to be front and center, did not like to sell, and was like, that's just not me. Then I got, ICs who depended on me for clients. And then I got employees because I'm in the state of California. And, like, that shifts it when people are depending on you to help them make their income. But I understand not everybody's in that position. So, like, my teachers never had to sell because I did the selling. Because at that role, I was like, well, that's my job now as the business owner. But I went through my own evolution. And so in the program, I'll let Chantill discuss that. But I think the mindset shift is, like, for me, because it was a mindset shift. I hated selling. I was a Pilates instructor. But I sold 5 packs every 5 weeks or 10 packs every 5 weeks. You are selling. So I want to acknowledge, like, or you're selling memberships perchance if you've stepped into that realm. Like, I want to, like, give yourself a pat on the back that even though you hate it, you are doing it. And when I really shifted selling, I was like, because what you're selling is you're solving someone's problem. It just doesn't get that. To me, it's like, I'm listening to you. I hear you have a problem. Here's a way to solve it. Oh, this option's too expensive. Well, I have another option that you can choose. And if none of them work, that's fine too. Like, and we support you in the mindset shift and in the strategy for how to sell, including, like, templates and scripts, because I was just like, I don't know, I'll just read from the script. And lo and behold, the script worked because people put a lot of energy into making scripts, and, like, and people were happy, so I just, that's my insight, but I'd love to hear Chantill's as well.
Yeah, well, it's just making me reflect on my own mindset shift and my own process. And I think, in my second studio, which was quite big, we had 12 teachers, we had teacher training program, blah, blah, blah. There was a moment where I think somebody was asking me about it at the Whole Foods grocery line, and I was thinking, all I can do right now is speak from my heart. And if I love what I do and I think it has value, it's not a problem. And so I would just invite like the question of not separating or like the idea of marketing and selling is something separate from you sharing the passion of what you do. It's not like what Ann and I talk a lot about, or we have in the past, is that we come from a very patriarchal, masculine, male-driven sales paradigm, which is complete nonsense. It doesn't, that's why we don't like it, is because it does not reflect our heart and soul and our passion and our caring and our desire for change. But if you scrap that, if you set that down and you say, it's not selling if I am educating and sharing my love for what I do. Now, the one big piece that we do support our teachers in, which is difficult and is something that we are constantly working on, is how do I communicate the value of what I do? And that's the crux. And that's the, like, when Ann just said, if somebody has an objection of finances, which is time and money are the two major objections for anything, then instead of saying, no problem, I have a cheaper offer, we teach you to consider and to learn how to say, let me share the value of this work, what you will achieve, what is possible through these means versus just attending a group class. And then you can decide, because I do have options. So we take you through that. And as Ann said, we do have scripts. We talk a lot about teaching as marketing. So standing into your teacher self, your educator self, right? This experience, this beautiful experience that you have of communicating what you do, and take that voice and learn how to communicate it in a lot of different ways that does not have to just be online. It can be through emails, which we're a huge advocate of, through in-person demonstrations and, and workshops and, community events, and getting on somebody's podcast to talk about what you do. There's just so many ways. But the bottom line, I think, is, can you communicate the value, and can you see it not as selling, but as sharing? And then it becomes very different. So yes, we take you through all of that. We're very used to that objection. And again, when you're in community with other teachers who are like, man, I struggle with that too, you feel heard, right? And then you feel seen, and then you feel supported, which then motivates you to say, could I be better at this? Could I end up really loving this? Could I figure out a way to change my relationship to marketing and selling that doesn't feel misaligned? And we see it over and over again. It happened for so many of our teachers. So
Awesome.
I think it answers the question.
No, it does. And it definitely, it's a big change. And I agree. Even with me, it feels the same. Like, as long if you have the passion for something, if you're just sharing that passion, and we have different ways, it's just like a lot of times people might feel it might make it easier for them to share it with somebody in person or their friend, because it's like, oh, I'm not selling, I'm just telling them all about it. But if they think about talking to their friend when they are posting on social media, writing a newsletter, or discussing something with their client at the studio, prospective client or something like that, with the same passion, it's like, hey, I'm not selling you, I'm just telling you what I'm passionate about, because I want to share it with you. That changes that whole selling mindset into caring mindset, really.
Yeah. And the other language shift I think we make is just that it is important. It's not enough to share. There has to be an invitation.
Yeah.
And so how do I so we teach something, we talk a lot about getting people to sell themselves. Like we want people to self-select, but there is also always an invitation, and we lean into the invitation instead of leaning away from the invitation, which I think many folks do, because they're like, oh, now I have to say, here's what you should do and how much it costs. But instead, it's like, how can you lean into the invitation without attachment, knowing that you've shared from your heart that what you do has, major impact. And then people will say yes or no, and that's none of your business, and you get to move on. So it's a big shift. Yeah. And it does take work, but it's beautiful work.
So taking all of that into practical, let's lean into your invitation. You just shared all of your passion and all of your knowledge with us. Here's the invitation part.
Nicely done. Okay. Go ahead, Leanne?
All right. Well, I'm leaning in here. We would love to invite you to learn about our program called and get on a call with us. A diagnostic teaching strategy call would be the step that would where you would be on a chat with Chantill and I, and we would share with you about the program, learn what you've done, and if it's a right fit, if it seems like it's a right fit, we'll share it with you. And in our last cohort, this doesn't always happen, but in our last cohort, we did have 100% rate of completion and selling. So in our last cohort, our group sold roughly $40,000 in online programming. And all of the people got their programs outlined on a course and received deposits, because we know that's that selling part and the technology part, and what am I going to do? Like which course am I going to create? Those are the things that tend to be the three things that hold people back. And so we really work to benchmark our teachers who are developing their programs, because once you receive a deposit, we know that the teachers in our programs have enough integrity that they're not going to deliver the course that they have said they're going to provide. And you get that excitement and that rolling forward. So, we are committed to again, getting teachers more revenue, more inspiration, more profit, less time, and a lot more creativity. I found the creativity to be a huge piece of this work. That's just really exciting as well.
Yeah, so you can get to know us more if you need that by, as Anastasia said, going to the website. I'm sure we're going to provide that information for you, and getting the new knowledge blueprint. Like that's a really good way to get to know us and to get to know this model a little bit more. The other invitation, like getting to know us invitation, would be to join our Facebook group, Lucrative Course Creation. Find us on Facebook. I'm sure we can share that with you in some other way, and be a part of our community. We give away a lot of free education. We have a lot of dialogue. We have interviews with our teachers. Like it's a great place to kind of steep yourself. If you're just like, I'm not sure, I want to know more. Those are the two best ways. But if you're really percolating and you're like, man, this really feels exciting, you feel lit up inside, then getting on a 30-minute diagnostic call with Ann and I is definitely the next best step.
What's the best way to connect with you ladies to set up that call?
Well, you can direct message us on Instagram or Facebook, either directly. On Instagram, it's Embodied Course Creation. That's our business Instagram account. So you can find us there and direct message us. Chantill Lopez or Ann Bishop, also on Instagram, or same thing through Facebook. Mm-hmm. That's probably the easiest. That way you don't have to remember an email address. You just have to remember our names, direct message us, and we will get you pointed in the right direction. So you can ask your questions and we can say, yeah, join the Facebook group. Or, in fact, when you join the Facebook group, you have a chance to say that you want the new knowledge blueprint. So it's all kind of, strategically in there. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, I really appreciate all the time, all the knowledge that you ladies shared. with us today during this interview. I will add all those links for anybody who's interested to get in touch with Chantill or Anne about the course, or just, if they're even want to follow, or, just kind of glean a little bit of pieces of wisdom from them, from like the blueprint or the group. It's all great. Like, you don't have to sign up just because like, hey, I'm 100% into it. Just get in touch. Yeah, just find the information, and who knows when you're going to be ready. If you have kids today, young kids, and 3 years down the road, or 6 months down the road, it's like, okay, well, I have more free time. There are different seasons in life for different things. So make sure to get connected with them so that life doesn't get in the way for you of creating something bigger from your business.
Oh, thank you. Yeah.
Well, thanks again, ladies. I appreciate it. And I really look forward to staying in touch with you.
Thank you, Anastasia. It was a pleasure.
Thank you. And thank you for listening.